Hi, and welcome to the In Detail podcast, where we are behind the scenes of creative business with Mick Moloney, Kate FitzGerald, and Warwick Mihaly. I'm Kate FitzGerald. I'm the director of Whispering Smith, small practice of 5 people in Perth in Western Australia.
I run Mihaly Slocum with my wife Erica, and we are in Brunswick East in Melbourne. Currently under stage 4 lockdown, and we have a studio of 7 people.
And I'm Mick from Moloney Architects. We're in Victoria as well. We're only in stage 3 lockdown in Ballarat here, which is about an hour west of Melbourne. So we're heading up the regional brigade for this podcast. Our practice is about 5 or 6 people, depending on what day it is. And we work mainly on residential projects with a little bit of commercial fronting as well.
So Warwick, why are you doing this show?
Well, I've been chatting with both of you guys for years about our businesses together. We have these great, cathartic, very deep conversations about the ins and outs of running our own businesses. And I guess the first thought we've each had was, why don't we record it all? What great tape that would make. But I guess more seriously, it's an opportunity for us to reflect on our own businesses together and the things we learn, and then share that with other people who are going through the same things we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you made that point too, Kate, that this would have been an incredible resource when you were starting out. I feel the same. If this is what we're kind of making here, is the tools or that information, those little gems that we've picked up along the way over the years, that would have been really useful for us when we were starting out.
Yeah, and I think it's this idea that we're all just learning as we go along, and maybe if we share some of the things that we have learned that are usually probably because we've made a mistake, or because we've got a system or a process that could be a bit better. And I think when we share those things with each other, maybe we can stop someone from making that same mistake a little bit faster than we did. And so maybe we can move the profession on a little bit, from what we experienced.
And we see that a lot in the, the forums, various AIA forums or ACA forums that you might be involved in, is that there's a really collegiate sort of attitude amongst a lot of architects to share what we know and to share our systems and our experiences. And I think this just contributes to that kind of overall atmosphere.
Yeah, I think there's a spirit of getting better together. And I do think architects are actually pretty good at doing that already. I think we're excellent at talking about design, and maybe not so good at talking about business. And partly probably because there's a history of being really cagey about that. That technically speaking, we're all in competition with each other because we're all providing fundamentally the same services to a finite pool of people. But rather than trying to cut up our own little slices of the pie and defend that to our teeth, let's work together to get better and maybe grow the size of the pie, so that we all are all better off. And if we can do that from a business perspective, that being good at business is what liberates us to be good at design.
Yep.
Yeah. 100%. It's a great saying, the rising tide that raises all boats. And I think that if we are all on the same page and we all sort of learn from each other, but we're constantly improving our businesses, that's going to have this sort of benchmarking effect across the industry where, we do look after ourselves and we don't get to the point where we're, massively undercutting each other or somebody's falling into a hole that could have easily been avoided.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the other part of it is too, that all practices start out as small practices. Bates Smart, Woods Bagot, Hassel, they didn't start off, automatically with 8,000 staff. I mean, everything grows from something small. And so if we can create a better environment for our practices to start up, those heroes of the future, we're going to get there a little bit faster, which is going to be great.
Yeah.
So why don't we get into it?
Sounds good.
Today's episode of In Detail was made possible with the help of our friends at Streamtime, who have developed team management software designed by and for the creative and design industries. We're fans of their dedication to the death of timesheets and their epically designed, user-friendly interface. Our thanks go to the Streamtime team for supporting us while we lift the cone of silence on what running a creative business is really like.
And today we are talking about
fees, the big one.
Money, cash.
Well, I think it was a natural choice. I mean, we had a lot of things we could have talked about on the show, but we went straight for the meat of the architectural world, which is a thing that's often under discussed and a lot of interest in it.
Yeah, and it's also at the heart, I guess, of everything that we do, right? You know, we're all here to be creative and leave really positive mark on the urban environments in which we operate, but we can't do that unless we can make ends meet.
Yeah.
The other part of fees, sorry, Mick. The other part of fees is, that we have constantly talking about how we underpay our graduates, how there's issues in the profession. We have, some appalling practices in the architectural industry. And one of those things stems from the fact that, over the last 15 to 20 years, our fees have been cut back. And how can you run a good and fair business if you're not making any profit?
Okay, so architects and other creative professionals, what do we sell? Are we selling our time? Are we selling creative genius? Are we selling some other form of value? What do you guys think?
I think we're selling time, but I think our clients aren't aware of that. I think they think that they're buying something else, but we're selling something different, and there's some confusion about that.
There's a disconnect there between what it is we think we're selling and what the client thinks they're buying.
So wait a second, you think that we're selling time, but our clients think they're buying a product?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't feel that way. I never charge hourly rates at all because I don't feel as though we're selling our time at all. I think we spend a lot of time thinking about what the value is to the client, and then we make sure our fees reflect that. And I think a lot of the time people are looking for a certain skill set that, concept design's a classic one. You can have a good idea in 15 minutes. Does that make it worth 1/4 of 1 hour's work?
Wait a second.
Yeah.
So can I ask 2 questions around that then? That analogy is great. There's a quote, that says something along the lines of, this thing is going to cost you $10,000. It took me an hour, which is $100, but the other $9,900 comes from the 15 years of experience that it took to get me to this point where I can do it in an hour.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when you say you don't charge hourly rates, do you ever, what happens if
that's a shocking lie. I've got two projects on at the moment that really are charging hourly rates, but they're both very weird projects.
But let's say on a regular project where you've established the value of the services that you're offering from, a fixed or a percentage model or something.
Yeah.
And what happens if the clients ask you to do something extra?
Well, we don't usually charge for it. So I think what we're doing in our fee structure at the start of the project is sort of saying, well, we sort of peg our fees similar to a lot of Melbourne practices. And despite the fact that we're located in Ballarat in regional Victoria, we are saying that we're offering this sort of high-level architectural service. We're located closer to you in the regions, but being a sort of quite a good percentage fee, it means that we've got room within that to absorb pretty much anything that gets thrown at us in terms of additional services. So if there's some extra work that needs to be done for a planning application or something like that, we typically just do it under the umbrella that is covered by that fee. That tends to work for us.
It's interesting. We've been going the other direction where we've been pushing more and more to define where the scope that we've covered in our fixed or percentage fee, which would cover the majority of the work that we do, ends and where additional work begins. And so as a proportion, for instance, of our income over the last 10 years, the amount of that income that is being generated by hourly rates has gone up by 50%.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's still a minority, but it's a third now of our income comes from that outwork. And we kind of feel proud about that, actually, that we've been able to set it up for ourselves.
Yeah,
Could you
that's
go back
amazing.
one step there, Warwick? We lost it to the Zoom.
I feel good that we've been able to recognise where the out-of-scope stuff can be charged. And generally speaking, our clients are really relaxed about it. We've got a whole management process where we never do it in arrears. We never say, oh, by the way, that thing we did for you last week, here's a $1,000 invoice. It's more that we have to do this. Are you happy for us to do it on hourly rates? And almost always people say, yeah, no problems.
So the thing about this is that you, you know, if you're using Streamtime or any other sort of project management software, even just timesheets, you're tracking your hours, right? But so Mick, you're not, when you go into a concept design meeting, you're not going to go in there and be like, here's my 15 hours worth of work without a product to, you know, at the same time. So we really aren't, we're tracking time as part of our business and making sure that we're not going over the time, you know, that we're not overdoing it or that we're not making a profit. But at the same time, there's a disconnect between how long it takes to produce that product that the client sees and what we're tracking as our mainframe of our business, as our business model.
So what happens if you hit your 15 hours? Do you keep on working until you get it right, or do you just say, right, that's it?
We've kind of seen, sorry, was that question for you, Kate? Sorry, you go.
No, I think it was for you.
I was thinking about that previously, and we've kind of looked at our business in the first 10 years, kind of it's in this startup phase. And to us, it's been about building the best product that we could. So if we'd sort of said, okay, well, we're going to put 6 weeks or 6 months to design for this part of the design, if we haven't finished it to our own satisfaction to create the sort of product / business that we want to create, then the extra time that I put into that to get it to the level I'm happy with is kind of like an investment into the image of the company, essentially. But I don't feel like that anymore. I feel like that was something that we had to do in the startup phase. But now that we've got some runs on the board, we've got a good portfolio of our work, people can sort of see that we know what we're doing. I kind of expect every job to be profitable.
Yeah.
What about you, Kate?
We work until we get it right.
Yeah.
Always. I think the other uncontrollable aspect of this is, you know, you might get it right, but your clients might disagree with you. And so that's so again, it's sort of, we're talking about the things that affect our fees. And so we may charge the same fee to 2 clients and do the same amount of work and have the same product, but those 2 clients will have very different perspectives on that. And so at the same time as we produce a product, we are also a service. And so there is that personal element of whether or not our clients are happy. And so I feel like architecture in quite a few ways when we talk about fees is understanding that there are these different parameters to when the finish is, where the finish line is.
And it's that it's an artistic process where we're creating something and saying, you know, here is a unique piece of art that you can live in or that you can work in. Yeah. And if we put something out there that is not to the client's liking, and this ties in with that sort of one of the other questions that's really closely linked into this is how to write the perfect fee proposal. Is that there needs to be some sort of limit there on the whole process of how many revisions of this design that you can come up with that's still feasible to produce within your fee. But you know, we've gone through projects in the past where we've done 10 or 15 concept designs for people, and it's completely not profitable. But unless you've got that sort of in your concept, in your fee proposal, that you're limiting the amount of redesign work that you'll do, theoretically, you could be on the hook forever.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have those controls in place in our agreements. And, so for instance, a clause for our sketch design phase is we will present one sketch design plus minor revisions, plus one round of minor revisions, and additional minor revisions or major revisions are excluded or are examples of additional work. Now, invariably, part of this is also about, expectations management and client management and making sure that your clients are happy. And so if we feel like we're pretty close after that one round of minor revisions, we're not going to like be a dick about it and say, we want an extra $150 please to finish the last thing off.
Yeah.
But if we get up to like revision D or E or F, and we're still feeling like the clients just want to keep on going and going and going, we'll say, look, we're going to do this last round of changes and that's it. And then we're happy. We're so happy to keep on changing this for you, but our fee only stretches so far. And so if you want us to keep working on this, we'll do it for a cost.
I think that's really important too, to kind of give your clients a little bit of a peek into your business and say, look, this is how the sausage is made. We don't just work forever on projects through the love of it. We've got this many hours associated with this part of the job, and we're coming up to the ceiling of that, and invite them into how you should, move forward as a profitable company.
So the interesting thing about this is that we've acknowledged that we are a creative profession and that there is a bit of weirdness to what we do, but at the same time, the thing that helps manage that weirdness is actually the structure, and explaining, no, there is a structure and it is very clear. And as long as you're prepared with that structure and you're upfront about it in your fee proposal, and you go through those things with your client to explain what that structure looks like, actually you can make the architectural profession, or you can make your services not as vague and reduce that.
And one of the benefits.
Do you ever wonder, Kate, how close our industry is?
Level.
I think everybody thinks that their industry is unique and no one could possibly understand it. But, when you talk to other business people, like business coaches or something like that, they're always like, no, you think you're special, but really you're
not special.
You're not special.
Yeah.
I wonder how, I've never worked with a coach or I really, I've never been a professional in another field, so I actually don't know.
Ray from ArchiBiz says it is almost the number one thing about the architectural profession, architectural businesses that is wrong at the moment, or is one of the most common things that he encounters, is the fact that the architectural profession like to think of itself as totally different.
They're special.
We have all these, reasons why ours is so much harder than another business. And I think it's actually just a reluctance to sit down and create parameters and track things. Yeah. Because we don't like working that way. But you have to work that way with money, always.
I reckon we're identical to like web developers or software developers. Where they're going, I think it's no coincidence that those guys often call themselves, enterprise architects or IT architects or whatever.
Yeah.
They're essentially doing exactly what we do, except instead of, we have sort of design, documentation, construction, let's say, they've got, wireframe design, maybe sort of more fleshed out design, and then coding, development.
Yeah.
And
just documentation, yeah.
Which is sort of documentation, but also the construction phase. But they have essentially the same kind of thing.
And they have the clients coming in and saying, look, I don't like the images all this size. I want them all to be landscape. And, I want to be able to click on this link and go somewhere else, which you might totally disagree with and have to change the entire structure to deal with that.
Yeah.
Unknown.
Can I go back to the original question about, how much should I charge? Because I think that for all of us, we've all been in practice for, a decade, give or take a bit. And I know that our systems that we have in place in our studio are not systems. Almost none of the systems that we have now are things we had at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's all stuff we've developed along the way. Yeah. And I reckon a really good way for us to maybe dive into the question about how much should I charge is something I've realised probably only over the last couple of years, that despite all this talk of hours and value and how long it takes to do stuff and how much that thing is worth once we've done it to our clients, I think I've come to realise that how much it costs to produce the work we do and how much we can charge for that work are actually totally disconnected from each other.
Yeah.
That is another thing that Ray from ArchiBiz refers to, is the fact that your selling price and your margin are totally disconnected. So what it costs, the first thing you do when you don't have a system in place is look at the information in front of you. How much time am I taking? How
Yeah.
much am I paying my staff? How much does my office cost? What are my overheads? All right, well, if it's costing me this much to run and I know I'm going to spend this much time, then therefore I guess I'm going to charge X. They're totally not related.
Yeah. Because
I mean, what if you're the most in-demand architect in the country? You're going to be charging 10 times more than
that
an
might
average
be
student.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why when I've discussed this before, I think it comes back to a lot of supply and demand, simple rules of economics. That if you're in a position where you have the experience, you've got the runs on the board, you've got some great projects, people want your service, your fees are going to increase. You know, you even if your overheads and the time it takes to complete those projects all remain static. There's an argument there that you can charge a larger fee, and therefore that's perfectly reasonable. That's what we're in business for.
I also think it's kind of like buying a house too. You know, when you if you've ever done it before, but you go in and you're like, oh, you know, they've got asking price, or they've got a range. Let's say it's 800 to $1 million. If I offer 800, am I going to miss out? You know, maybe I've got 900, but I don't really want to pay 900 if I could have got it for 8. And so there's all this guesswork going on with your fees. It's the same thing. Like, oh, I don't want to lose this job, but this is how much I can do that project for. So I think even at a baseline, knowing what your base level is, when do you start losing money? Add a bit of fat into that for the risk, and then go to town on the other bit and be prepared to lose that.
I think for a really...
It's something the BQE session, Warwick.
Say again, sorry?
It's something you said in the BQE session about, you know, just charge an extra %, see how you go. You soon quickly work out that they're not connected.
Yeah. And that's a bit of like trial and error approach, really, is that I don't, we do a lot of fee proposals over the course of a year, and they're not all the same figure. You know, sometimes we'll be like, oh, well, we're absolutely swamped. We can't possibly do this project without putting on a new person. So we're probably going to need to charge our, you know, premium rate there. And I think that's probably might come as a surprise to some people who say, oh no, architecture fees are 10%, you know, regardless of the project or the firm. But there's, you know, for maybe some of the listeners who don't know the ins and outs of architectural fees, you know, they can range from anywhere from, you know, 6 or 7% for residential build, right through to 17, 18, 19%. And there's a huge, you know, it might not sound like much in the scheme of the project, but that's a huge amount for the architect. Yeah.
Also, I mean, there's clients that I've worked for in the past that if they asked me to do a project again, I would triple their fee. And if they said no, I'd be like, okay.
Well, that's the not to be churlish about it, but we call that the arsehole factor, right?
Yeah, it's the arsehole factor.
And I mean, we have a process with our clients that we're really transparent about the way we charge our fees, which we've had repeated feedback from both potential clients who become paying clients and those who've gone in other directions, that one of the things they've always really liked about our approach is that transparency. But one of the downsides of it is that we can't then manipulate the fee to suit either the external or internal conditions that might make us want a job more or not want it as much, or
so you have to kind of choose a figure then that's the baseline that makes every project profitable, because once that information's out there. Do you guys have your fees on your website?
No, not on our website, but in our very first meeting, we sort of will give an indication of how it all works. And then go back later with us on the second meeting and, you know, prepare a full fee proposal based on the actual budget and actual scope of works.
Yeah.
You know, if we've said that, you know,
go up from there though.
No, that's right. If it says 12% in the, you know, in that initial kind of indication, and you end up charging 14%, they're going to be like, "What? Are we the assholes?"
Yeah.
Is the asshole tax applied?
Because they know it's the asshole tax now.
Well, that'll teach you to be.
You guys don't. What do you guys do on that?
I give them a throwaway range, because often we're trying to tell people, we're trying to let people down gently quite a lot, especially with all this stimulus around. You know, everyone with 25 grand's calling us up. And we just say, look, your architectural fees will set you back somewhere in between 10 and 15%. And then that sort of covers us mostly for the kind of range we want to charge.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we do too, Kate. And, and also the same numbers, because that's got where we sit as well. And we send out a client guide, which I think everybody's got their little welcome packs that they send.
Client guide, yeah.
And in that we do a little work example, saying, here's client budgets of construction budget of $800,000 plus the GST. Architectural fees are charged on the ex-GST amount, so that people, because I think one of the first things they see is that, oh, well, if I'm paying your 12% plus GST, is that on the construction price that already includes GST? I'm not paying my GST and GST. I'll get that question quite a lot. So a little worked example in there is really valuable to people. And then we even put in things like the structural engineers costs, the quantity surveyors, the land surveyors, and just sort of put in their little brackets that, in the order of $5,000 or in the order of $2,000. And I think it's really powerful to give people that idea of that total project cost, which is a term that comes up a lot in the client architect agreements, is that it's not just the build cost and the architectural cost that the client's got in the forefront of their mind. It's everything right down to the removalist and finance costs and all those sort of things. And that's something that we, I think, struggle with sometimes in some projects, is trying to get a client across, not just across the line by saying, okay, well, here's the construction cost and here's our fee, but you need to consider that within this other sort of spreadsheet of costs that you're responsible for managing.
So what do you guys do? Do you charge with those kind of, once you've got those fees, you go fixed percentage? What do you do?
Yeah, we're at fixed percentage. We used to run with the old the fee graph with the big the big curve in it, but we just found it was quite a level of complication that was, I think, making the whole thing a bit too hard from the start. So if we sent out a client guide at the start and it had this complicated way, most other businesses don't use a graph to tell you how much they cost, and so I think in a market like ours, which is less sophisticated than Sydney or Melbourne, it's a way of kind of saying, well, look, here's our service. It's all written in plain language, and here's our fee. It's a fixed number. And whilst it probably represents less of a good deal for the client, if they double their budget from $1 to $2 million, it might be reasonable for that to step down 1% or so. But we've just found that it wasn't. It didn't seem to be a positive for our proposals. What did you find, Kate? Did you do it?
We actually charge a fixed fee, but it's only because of inexperience, and a lot of these conversations I've had with the both of you and other people helping me understand how you can make that percentage work. So, I mean, in one of my first fee negotiations, the client's husband was, one of Perth's best accountants. He just said straight away, like, I don't want you to benefit from my misfortune. And so therefore the idea of charging on a fee, because he didn't want the house at all and he was just paying for his wife's thing. And so
that is such a horrible attitude.
It is a horrible attitude to face, but the answer, it was good for me and there was many other horrible lessons in this negotiation. I didn't have an answer for that.
I have a pre-prepared answer for that, only because I've been at the receiving end of that one a couple of times as well. And I just say that, no, look, if you can give me a 100% fixed scope of works in that your house will definitely cost this amount of money, then I'll give you a 100% fixed fee. But by changing the project from a $1 million to a $2 million project, you're massively increasing the scope of works. So therefore our fee needs to be adjusted. And that's why percentage fees are the industry standard. And that's why the successful projects are delivered using that methodology, because it allows the scope of works to reflect, the fee to reflect the actual scope of works. But that's taken me so long to actually have that as that automatic response, because the first time you hear it, you're like, what?
Yeah. How unfair on our poor clients. I also think one thing that we've chatted about another time in relation to that, Mick, is, and you too, Warwick, how you structure that in your invoices. So you've already made them aware of it by taking them through your fee proposal, rather than just, sort of landing on them at some point when the QS report comes back in and saying, oh, you owe me another 30 grand. Sort of already, like, that's, how do you sort of develop that process so that you don't end up in that position where you've just charged someone extra and they can't see the work for it. You've taken that totally out of the equation, that relationship, but, do you want to elaborate on that?
I've got a way that I deal with that. Warwick, did you want to talk about your methods? Or?
Yeah, sure. But you go first.
Yeah, what I do just in our client guide is to kind of explain that we don't know how much the building's going to cost when we start designing it. We move towards a budget. If we hit that budget target with the design that you like, that's great. But it's a 1 in a million sort of shot. So we set the budget in with the client's knowledge at the start. We try to work towards that budget. We test it with the QS. If we don't achieve that budget, we always say, look, we're going to do these changes, X, Y, and Z, to bring it back to that budget. And that means that the client's very much in control of that process. Mm-hmm. And we really sort of bring them into that. And then we explain that what we're doing through the process of design is that we're creating this prototype, this one-off building. It's never been done before. And we're trying to tell you that the cost of it is, more or less going to be 12%, 14%, whatever it's going to be. By going into the project at $800,000 and ending up at 1.6, which is the true scope of works at 1.6, yep. We've actually underestimated our fee all the way along until it's revealed what the true scope of works is and what the true project value is. So we've actually got it written in our client guide that we're just doing the best we can. We're just giving you a running estimate of the fees. And if it turns out that that estimate is undercooked, well, then we need to catch up. So at the end of the day, we've got a scope of works and a fee that are, roughly aligned. And one of the ways we do that is to really keep our clients in the driver's seat when it comes to the budget and the agreed quantity surveyors plan, so that we get a cost plan done at the end of the major design stages, so concept design and design development, and then we get another one done pre-tender, so that the client can sit there and say, okay, well, I started off at $800,000, I added in that lap pool, now I'm at 920, mm-hmm. or I'll take that out, I'll do that another time, and they really sort of, I think, give them a lot more, gives the client agency in that control, and then we just haven't had anybody query the budget, the fees against their budget that they've agreed to, mm-hmm. or the cost forecast that they've already agreed to. Mostly because we don't actually have that conversation. It's automatically updated in their invoices, and the hotline just says, here is the current forecast cost of works prepared by the quantity surveyor on this date. And that figure is then in a very high-tech Excel spreadsheet that we use to do our invoicing. That cell is linked to the percentage for that stage, and then it all just totals out at the bottom. Mm-hmm. How do you go, Warwick?
Look, pretty similar, actually. One of the things that we find is that our clients are not good at establishing a starting budget. And I don't see it as a criticism. I mean, no one is. I mean, how do we know how much anything should cost until someone else tells us? And, you mentioned that what we're doing is producing a prototype every single time, which therefore, by definition, makes it impossible to understand what something should cost.
Yeah.
So we find on a lot of our projects that there are shifts in our budget. Not always up, but I guess in the industry that is probably the most common thing to happen. And
well,
so
that's an important point, though, isn't it? It's a two-edged sword. If you come in and think, okay, well, I'm doing this project, it's going to cost $1 million, and we've got some clients at the moment who are potentially, a couple of $100,000 under their budget for what they actually want, and it just means our fee is less because the scope of work is less.
I have never had that situation.
Well, we've had situations.
I've got a lot of very hopeful clients, and I understand that.
We have had situations where both have happened, and that's actually what makes me wary of the fixed fee. And part of that is because there's an information asymmetry in the client-architect relationship. In fact, in any relationship any individual has with a professional, where we know things that our clients don't know and our clients know things that we don't know. For example, we know what construction actually costs and have, regularly developed gut feels about, this is actually a $500,000 or $1 million or a $2 million thing, irrespective of what you say you want it to cost. That's kind of, I bet that's where it's going to end up. And then our clients know actually what they can afford, not what they told you, but what they can actually afford. And the clients know what they want as well. And so one of the downsides, in a perfect world, there would be complete transparency along all of those layers. But without that transparency, you need to find, without the possibility of that like instant, immediate transparency, as you develop trust through the relationship, those layers get peeled back and you get to the end of the project and you go, all right, well, it started off at 500, it's now 800, or whatever the numbers are. And we're actually all still happy with it. And, you jumped onto something really critical, I think, that if the client feels like they're not in the driver's seat, I think there's a term for that, isn't there? It's being taken for a ride. So spot on analogy.
Yeah.
If they are in the driver's seat, if they've made the decisions along the way, being presented with a couple of options and said, well, here's the thing that you can afford and here's the thing that we think you want. But by the way, that thing is like 20% more expensive. And they make the call to go in that direction, well then
absolutely,
they're happy. And then they're happy to pay for the fees that are associated with that because they pushed the project in a particular direction and all the things that accommodate around that, be it construction and costs or consultant fees.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, and we talk to clients a lot about that we're on the same side and that we're your agent, we're your professional spirit guide in this process. And we want to get you the best result that we can within the resources that are available, your budget, and trying to work. And that's why we use a quantity survey a lot of the time, is that we set them up as our straw man, our bad guy, and say, look, the QS has said that we can't do the concrete wall cladding. It's going to be $600 a square meter. So we're going to have to get around that some way and put ourselves in. And clients love this idea that you would be treating their building like it's your own house in your own budget.
Do you think the percentage fee model undermines that position of being the spirit guide?
That's the question.
I mean, that's valid. It depends on how you look at it, but I think the rhetoric's important too, and that relationship that you develop with the client. And I'll say things like, I don't want to sound like a tight ass. I don't want to put a handbrake on your dreams. All these sort of little sayings I have along the way when I'm talking to clients, because I actually don't feel comfortable people just spending money for the sake of it, and making a house or an office or whatever it is just ridiculously big because that's one of the options that you can do. I'd much rather the client walk away at the end of the job having spent a reasonable amount of money and got what they want. And so I try to almost go too far beyond, in this relationship with the client. I want to be the one who's seen as constantly saying, oh, I don't know, it sounds a bit expensive. Which is a weird situation because you've also got to, at the same time, push design ideas onto them and say, this is a beautiful thing. We should do this. We should invest your money into this finish because that's it's going to be the most lovely part of the project.
I think that's an interesting thing. You've just sort of rested on like an aesthetic or a, creative or beautiful value, but also there's things like, all right, well, maybe we're going to try and get it to be damn close to passive house standards, so it costs you less in the long run. Yeah. And so there is no financial parameter in the discussion that is that simple, I think. And I mean, we were also talking about the fact that, we might take on a job that's, say, $500,000 because we think the project is awesome, the client is awesome, we're going to have a wow of a time, and we're going to, it's going to be a really simple, easy process.
Yeah.
We might take on a job that's $5 million and want to quit. Yes. So they're not real, yes, okay, we're going to get a lot more fees out of the $5 million job, but is that really, it's not about the fee in the end, it's about the profit margin of that project.
Yeah.
Maybe
and the enjoyment of the job. That's every time.
maybe there's actually, that's a healthy tension to maintain, that if the hard line, the percentage fee is, if you increase your scope or budget, I will charge you more money. That's the,
you go back 1 sec. Sorry, Warwick, we lost you.
Maybe there's value in the tension of that. That the hard line is that if you increase your scope or budget, I will charge you more money. But there's all these soft management techniques, like the things you were talking about, Mick, with trying to be the playing bad cop a bit with the dollars and saying like, this is exciting, but just hold on a second, you sure you want to spend this extra money? Because if your clients hear that over and over and over again, they'll know that actually in your heart of hearts, you're looking after their money, even though that you are also simultaneously profiting from them spending more.
Which is one of the reasons why I like the percentage thing and like getting it out of the way at the start, like by saying, here's your fee, it's going to be 14%, 12%. That's one conversation we have to have once. And why I don't like the idea of the fee graph is that if you can get that conversation out of the way and it's just something that's handled by your accounting staff and you don't have to really let that sort of influence the dirty sort of fees part of it to influence the creative process. I think it opens up that relationship between the architect and the client, and you're no longer sort of saying, oh well, if you make this decision, your fees will go up by $200,000, and therefore your percentage fee will go down to 13.7%. It all seems a bit too, for my taste, a bit too businessy. You never go to your doctor and discuss the fees, really. You go to the front desk at the end and you get the bill. I've never sat down and talked to my trusted GP or something and said, okay, well, what are we talking here? $80 for this consultation, or is it $130?
I actually quite like that I totally agree with you on the doctor's analogy. But for some reason, I actually quite like it's not so much even necessarily about transparency, but the question of fees being front and centre. One of the reasons I think we're able to charge additional fees for out-of-scope work now as a studio is that we don't just have that single conversation at the beginning. I remember actually recognising that one of the downsides of that approach is you have that conversation, you've set it at 12%, and then they add that, a $200,000 or a $400,000 little granny fut out the back. And it's a big enough scope change that it's going to require you to do more work, and that maybe there's a whole second town planning application and there's all this extra stuff associated with it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's okay to have a conversation about, like to say, look, that's big enough for us to warrant a re-conversation about fee. But anything short of that, like what happens if it's just, oh, by the way, you have to do this extra little thing to Heritage Victoria because council has now asked for it. And it's not 100 hours of work, but it is 20 hours of work. And like asking for an extra 20 hours worth of fees when you've had one conversation about fees a year ago, but that is going to cover 1,000 hours of work. Like it feels pitchy.
Yeah, it's a blunt instrument, the old percentage.
Yeah, it's super blunt instrument. And so by having, I don't think the method is necessarily critical here, but being sort of prepared to have constant conversations about dollars is.
Well, it keeps it in the forefront of your mind, and you're kind of almost in practice with the client talking about fees and the impact of their decisions and those fees. I think, perhaps you learn something every day. I think that's something that we could work on, because we tend to treat it like it's this sort of, hold your nose at the start of the project, get it out of the way, and then we don't have to mention the icky subject of fees ever again. But, when I'm in a position where I'm paying somebody, this is a lot of money that a client pays an architect. If I was in that position and I had that consultant working for me, then I'd be certainly very happy to talk about those fees, and I'd want them to be almost proactively bringing that up and saying, well, yeah, we've got this allowed for in this, but the things that you're asking for now have to be extra.
Thanks everyone so much for joining us on our first ever show at In Detail. Warwick, where can they find us?
You can find us everywhere. Our website is www.indetail.show, where we will maintain a suppository.
I didn't think you were going to do it.
That joke was much funnier in the first day.
I think you
You know, leave it in there. Don't cut that out. Still just as good.
What do we have?
What?
What other suppositories? Where are our other suppositories? Work?
Other suppositories are on Spotify or your favourite podcasting service. We are on YouTube if you want to see Mick's and Kate's beautiful faces. And we also have a Twitter handle if you'd like to get in touch with us for that personal touch, and our handle is In Detail Show. Awesome.
I think that's everything.
So stay tuned, I guess, for our next episode. Mick, do you want to give a little teaser of what that one's going to be about?
Yeah, sure. I think we're all going to be talking about what's involved in writing the perfect fee proposal, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's a great extension to what we talked about today, extending that into, I guess, some more practical tools about how to actually put that together.
Sure.
There's nothing that helps you out in your practice more than, the advice you get from other architects about how they've dealt with certain things in their fee proposals. So now we're going to take you behind the scenes of the perfect fee proposal.
Yep. I look forward to part one of 50 episodes on the site. One giant
2,000-year series on fee proposals.
Great. See you then.
See you then.
Gotcha.